So a Russian ambassador to the UK was sat down with Sky News to talk about the rebuilding of Mariupol. Now, this is an interesting timing for this interview because this is at the same time that the Financial Times, let's look it up, Financial Times Mariupol released a report about how in Mariupol, the rebuilding efforts are absolutely awful. I recommend you guys read this on your own. It's really, really good. It's a breakdown of how after Mariupol was destroyed by the battle, that the Russians promised all these rebuilding projects, but then gave all the contracts to a bunch of pretty shady companies who botched it, didn't repair it, or if they did repair it, they repaired it so poorly that they're gonna have to need to repair it again, or that the conditions are pretty, well, just goddamn awful. I highly recommend you reading it. In fact, we can probably read some of it right now. Look at some of this. Look at this renovation work. This is awful. This is what Russia brought to Mariupol, destroyed their homes, then left it flooding with just giant exposed pipes, no heat, busted roofs with water pouring. Oh my God, look at all of this. Anyway, go read the article for yourself. Point is that what the Russians are doing is they're building up like a few new buildings, taking pictures of that, plastering it on their TVs and saying, we built Mariupol. Oh my God, we rebuilt it. When the majority of buildings are still not in great condition. And even the ones that have been repaired, many of them have been repaired in this manner to not be of quality. And many are still just not repaired at all. And we've covered on the channel before, babushkas living in Mariupol apartments coming out and complaining about these contractors not doing a great job. And what this article breaks down is not only, man, look at the amount of damage done across the city and all of the damage broken, but just how these companies just did a terrible job in rebuilding, an absolutely god-awful job at rebuilding. Anyway, you can go check it out yourself. Look at these things that people have to make do with in Mariupol. Putting doors sideways to try to be able to get to your apartment. Some residents built walkways out of doors to bridge two-story drops. Others fixed mattresses across broken windows or filmed rain pouring into their homes. The water would collect in buckets and freeze. We called it the Mariupol flood, says Dmitry, who lived on one of the lower floors. Where repairs were at times carried out, they were often incomplete or poor quality. The building's passport shows that Stroy, this is like the company that screwed them all over, renovation was supposed to be completed by the second quarter of 2023. So the thing is, this company specifically that this article decides to concentrate on is a shell company that a connected oligarch was able to put a bunch of funds into so it could get into Mariupol reconstruction game. He's not somebody with a history of construction. He's not somebody who knows what he's doing. He's somebody who saw an opportunity to grab a government contract and grabbed it. Anyway, here is Sky News interviewing the Russian ambassador to the UK, bragging about the rebuilding efforts that we just looked at. And please read the full article. I only covered like 1/10 of the just horrible treatment that these people faced. But now watch this guy brag about what we just looked at.
Yodar, go to Mariupol now. Look at it. It's a new totally rebuilt city now. Port of it. I just looked at a report from it. It is amazing how beautiful it is. Not every building has been restored right now, but a lot of efforts has been done. We have now different regions from Tula, one of the regions in Tula, which are building new mansions over there, new schools, new kindergartens, new clinics over there especially.
By the way, this problem was not just for residential buildings, but public buildings as well, including schools. Schools that have not been rebuilt. And for example, different rail cars that were destroyed. If you go back to the article, the new ones that have been installed don't cover all of the routes that they used to. And in fact, this is actually the saddest part of the article. The new rail lines that have been introduced in Mariupol that they're now broadcasting as like Russian projects, most of these projects are projects that were being done by the Ukrainian administrators before they took over the city. Like in that article, we scrolled past it quick. There were rail cars that they were supposed to use for this new line that were designed by the Ukrainian government that they took over. And then what they did is they took over, They then gutted these rail cars and did like half of the route that they used to. So they did it worse. But now the rail cars also don't have heat, so people freeze in it because they did it shittily. So what they did is they hijacked the previous Ukrainian government's administrative work, hijacked their projects, did a worse job, then took credit for it like they were the savior. And they've brought modern civilization to the city. I don't know how to what I could compare it to besides it's like those Republicans who take credit for Biden's infrastructure bill after they voted against it. That's it's a little different because, a war, but you get my point.
People are returning to Mariupol. It is now becoming, not yet, but it is now becoming beautiful city with naval base, with new clinics, as I have said. But really, go and you look at it with.
For those of you who don't know, it's called like Russia's Potekmin, and that's not how you say it. There's it has to do with Catherine the Great, and when she traveled into the conquered lands they had taken from the Ottomans, they built a bunch of fake villages to impress her. Potemkin village, I think. Yeah, Potemkin village. The term comes back from when Catherine the Great conquered lands the Ottomans used to have, and everything was destroyed. They didn't want to just show her all this destruction, so they made some fake villages along her route to oh, look, it's all civilized and good. That's what the Russians are doing in Mariupol.
Your own eyes.
But you admit that in order to get to what you're saying Mariupol is now, it needed to be destroyed in the way that it was.
I don't like how the interviewer accepts how it is now, definitely considering that this report came out very recently. So it was also in the news, and if she was following it, she might, maybe this interview was conducted at, February 13th. February 13th. She should have access to this information.
Well, they could surrender earlier than that. They could surrender Mariupol much earlier than trying to make a fighting place of it.
So his complaint is, well, didn't you guys have to destroy it for all these great things you're talking about? And his thing is, well, if the Ukrainians didn't resist, well, if you didn't invade, then they wouldn't have to resist. It's a ridiculous premise.
Do you admit that these sorts of war crimes took place across Ukraine?
Well, I'm sure that on every side, everybody, in this case, the Secretary General of the United Nations is saying that he condemns every crime committed, whether it be in Ukraine or in the other place, by
35 to 75,000 dead, according to the AP investigation using satellite photographs to just track the mass grave expansion outside of the city of Mariupol. For frame of reference, 27 to 28,000 people have died in Gaza so far, according to the Palestinian Ministry of Health. If you trust their numbers, I have good reason to believe that they're at least semi-accurate. At least from the NGOs that I trust, and I trust their judgment of them. You can disagree with me if you want. 35 to 75,000. I don't want to compare at all, but just the premise of killing those many people in that short a period of time in a city, what? How many people live in Mariupol? Population of 40,000. 35 to 75,000. Think about that. Think about that. You're wiping so many people off the face of the earth. And I gotta say, out of all the interviews that I do, the ones that are some of the most horrific are when I'm talking to people about evacuations from Mariupol. That are some of the most horrific. And I'm doing a documentary right now where I followed around my friend Dima when he did evacuation work around Chasiv Yar and other locations. And I sat down and I interviewed him about Mariupol. And it was hard for him to do that interview. The things that scared him the most seemed to be the air bombardment. God, the air bombs are massive. And just the way he described just the bodies and the bodies and the bodies and having to swerve around bodies in the road. And people just digging graves wherever they could and kept going. It's horrific. And 35 to 75,000 next to a city of 440,000. It's stunning. It's like apocalyptic.
by anybody.
What's the view from Moscow?
They like it very much. It is. They like
A documentary. I haven't even made. Somebody just recommended 20 Days in Mariupol. I can't recommend it, not because I don't like it or anything. I just can't watch it. I haven't watched it. I still haven't watched it. I can't watch it. I can't build myself up enough to watch it. I just can't. But that's a documentary I've heard very good things about if you wanted to go watch it, to see some of the things that happened in Mariupol.
by anybody.
What's the view from Moscow?
They like it very much. It is. They like to press it. It is. I will tell once again that there are two things in it. One thing is to show to us that if we will continue fight Ukraine, then we will have to meet NATO. This is one. It's a threat. Second is that, of course, generals are trying to get more money from the budget for the reforms for the forces, especially in UK. And I will tell you what President Putin has said in his interview to Tucker Carlson recently. We have nothing, no interest in Poland. We have no interest in Latvia, Estonia, or any other countries.
That Russia is going to test
but
Article 5 in the next
no, they can imagine to themselves what.
No. We have no interest. We have no interest, guys. I think he said so. When have the Russians lied about what countries they're going to invade before? Besides, Ukraine. Twice. In Georgia. And Moldova. And Chechnya. Twice. I mean, just a few. All of them during this administration. But this government and also this exact same administration would never do it again. I mean, he is saying that Russia's borders end nowhere, but I mean, maybe Ukraine is nowhere. We could just trust it. We could just trust it. We could just trust it, guys. We could just trust it. We could just trust it. I mean, why was he asking for the nuclear umbrella not to touch the Baltic states? Probably no reason. I mean, why would he want it so if he invaded Estonia, there would not be nukes to meet him? For what purpose? I have no idea. Just a little thinking, just a little guessing. Dylan, do mods ever bring article links to Dylan's attention? People can link articles if they want. But I won't promise you that I'll read your article. They can, but the answer was absolutely straightforward, that we have no interest. We are not eager. We are not interested.
There was no interest in the invasion.
No interest because there is no interest in Poland or other Baltic countries, and we fully understand that any escalation beyond Ukraine will bring a world conflict, which beyond
Ukraine, the country you said you wouldn't invade in the first place. The problem is, how I talk about credibility and why building credibility is important? This is why credibility is important. Does anybody in this room trust this guy? Can we get like a 1 if you trust this guy's telling the truth, 2 if you don't, or 3 if you're just not sure? Can we get like, I hate to do a poll, but just, just quick. 2 if you don't, 1 if you trust him, 3 if you don't know. I'm looking at gutter chat. I'm looking at site chat. I can't look at YouTube, but I'm going to assume it's probably the same. It's all 2s. It's all 2s. And the reason it's all 2s is because, there's 1. There's a single 1. Wait, no, he's pointing a gun at the 1, I think. It's hard to say. Point is, the reason we don't believe them is because they've destroyed their credibility. Is because they said they wouldn't invade Ukraine back in 2014. Then they said they didn't when they did. Then they said they didn't go into the Donbass when they did. And then they invaded Ukraine again after we said they would, and they said they wouldn't, and then they did. So at this level, they've destroyed their credibility on this issue so many times. And then you combine that with the fact that the Russians are saying that their borders end nowhere. That's a line Putin said. They're posting those posters everywhere. You listen to what Putin was asking for before, and that was to remove the nuclear umbrella from these Baltic states, from Romania, from the post-Soviet states. Why would he want that nuclear umbrella removed? You can come to your own conclusions. And you just think about the credibility and the benefit of the doubt we could have given them before when we tried to make a deal with them and gave them the benefit of the doubt for 8 years as they continue to kill Ukrainians. And their credibility is smashed. This, how we're feeling right now, is how the Iranians feel about making another Iran deal with the Americans. How you're feeling right now is how the Kurds feel when dealing with the United States. How you're feeling right now, right, is how a lot of people feel when they go back on these agreements and deals and things that they committed to do, which makes it harder to make deals with them in the future because we can't take that they would abide by said deals for granted. And so therefore we would only accept a deal when we have A, either no other choice, or B, something else making it so even if they did violate the deal, we would have something like force or an army, something to fight them with. So this is why credibility matters. This is why when Trump comes in and just rips up an Iran deal, like that is bad. That does hurt us. That's why when Trump comes up and he starts saying, I won't defend you guys with the NATO if you don't give me more money, that has an effect. And rebuilding that credibility takes time. What would it take for you guys to trust this guy? A lot, right? It would take a whole lot. Now you understand the problem with credibility. It's more important than people think. I understand it's a kind of a vague concept, like how do you build credibility? How do you establish credibility? But it is really important. These are the types of things that have kept like endless conflicts endless, like the conflict between Israel and Palestine. So if you get down into Israel-Palestine, so much of it isn't even that it's impossible for them to meet some of both of their interests by coming to the table and finding a deal. It's that there's just a complete lack of credibility on either side for how they view the other.